What if the key to massive investment success wasn't really about, complicated financial formulas or obsessing over the latest quarterly reports? What if it was simply knowing who to talk to and asking the right questions about a company's fundamental character? We're talking finding firms set up for like decades of growth, not just quick gains. Welcome along to Book Talk Finance. Great to have you with us. Today, we're doing a bit of a deep dive into one of the most vital, truly timeless finance strategies ever put down on paper. It's one that really proves qualitative research, the human element, gives you the ultimate edge. This talk is all about uncovering the core philosophy behind some truly legendary long-term investing wins.
Yeah, and our focus today is on a genuine Wiley investment classic. It basically redefined how people thought about growth investing, common stocks and uncommon profits and other writings. I mean, this book is so fundamental. If you follow finance at all, you know the author, Philip A. Fisher. Even Warren Buffett credits Fisher as, well, a major foundation for his own investment thinking.
Fisher was really a groundbreaking thinker, wasn't he? He actually dared to look past the balance sheet, beyond just the raw numbers. He focused almost entirely on these qualitative factors, people, the management culture, and his whole philosophy, it's kind of summed up perfectly in the book's famous dedication, which really feels like a direct challenge to you, the listener, the learner.
It really does. He dedicated the book, and I quote, "To all investors, large and small, who do not adhere to the philosophy. I have already made up my mind. Don't confuse me with facts."
Huh. I love that. It sort of sets our mission for this book talk, doesn't it? We're here to challenge ourselves with facts, with these qualitative insights. So our goal is to unpack the essence of Fisher's approach. Specifically, we need to look at his famous research method. He called it Scuttlebutt, and then really dig into the first 5 points of his big 15 points framework for evaluating stocks.
Okay, yeah. And to really get Fisher, you need a bit of context. He starts the book by arguing that, look, opportunities for spectacular profits, they exist today just like they always have. He points to these huge historical growth stories, pioneers like Henry Ford, or the massive expansion of the Aluminum Company of America way back. The idea for an investor now isn't to find the next Ford exactly, but to identify that same potential for decades-long growth, even though the industries and the mechanics of success look totally different now.
Okay, so the game's changed, but the prize, that massive long-term growth, is still out there. And you mentioned a key shift is in management attitude.
It absolutely is. That's central to Fisher's observation. He saw this fundamental change happening over time. Back when corporations were often owned and run like personal family businesses, management often had this really long-term, almost generational view. But then as professional managers, people who didn't necessarily own large chunks of the company took over, there was this, well, almost inevitable drift towards short-term thinking, focusing on hitting the next quarter's earnings number, keeping Wall Street happy in the immediate term, rather than, building that deep, long-range value.
Right. So the ultimate long-term bet then is finding those maybe rare companies where management just refuses to play that short-term game. They're genuinely committed to that institutional, decades-long planning. Okay, sounds great in theory, but how on earth do you actually spot that? How do you detect that kind of commitment from the outside looking in?
Ah, well, this is where we get to Fisher's really famous method, scuttlebutt. If the philosophy is the what find long-term grower scuttlebutt is the how, he saw it as a kind of art form, this qualitative, really ground-level research. It involves gathering deep contextual information about a company's real strengths and weaknesses by talking to, well, pretty much everyone connected to it. You're building a 3D profile.
Okay, this is definitely not just reading the company's press releases or a few news articles. For anyone not familiar, maybe unpack that a bit. Who exactly did Fisher say you should be talking to?
It's proper investigation. You talk to customers, are they just okay with the product, or are they genuinely enthusiastic, fiercely loyal? You talk to competitors. Do they actually respect the company's innovation, maybe even fear it a little? Or do they just wave them away as, a minor player? You talk to suppliers, do they feel management treats them fairly, or are they constantly being squeezed on price and terms? And critically, he stressed talking to recent former employees and also key people at trade associations.
Wow.
They often have a really valuable perspective.
That sounds like a phenomenal amount of work, though, especially today. I mean, how can you realistically apply scuttlebutt when companies control their messaging so tightly, everything's managed through official PR and digital channels? Isn't getting that kind of unfiltered view much harder now?
That's a really fair point, and it is a challenge. But the sources, and Fisher's writing itself, remind us the method is about spotting patterns. It's connecting dots that purely looking at the numbers, the traditional accounting methods, will just completely miss. Scuttlebutt helps you verify those fundamental business characteristics that, frankly, can't easily be faked, no matter how glossy the annual report is. For example, if you talk to 3 different suppliers and they all hint that the purchasing department is being forced to cut corners on quality, or if several former employees quietly mention a culture of fear around raising problems, well, that paints a picture of management integrity, or the lack of it, that you'll never see on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I mean, imagine actually talking to an Enron employee back then, or a WorldCom vendor just before things blew up. Maybe seeing the worry or the pressure they were under. The source material really makes the case that if investors had properly applied this scuttlebutt test rigorously, they might well have dodged those disasters completely, because those companies would likely have failed that fundamental qualitative check. Scuttlebutt acts almost like an early warning system for rot.
Exactly right. That ground-level, human-focused research gives you a powerful and often totally overlooked advantage. So once you've used Scuttlebutt to get a sense of the company's character, its integrity,
Mhm.
to satisfy yourself, it's not just smoke and mirrors then, and really only then are you ready to apply the more detailed buying criteria.
Okay, so if Scuttlebutt tells you what kind of company you're looking for, the character profile, if you like, then the 15 points are the detailed checklist, the specific job requirements.
Precisely. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. This framework gives you the detailed prescription for what to actually buy. And the really key thing here, which the source material hammers home, is that a truly great investment, a Fisher-style investment, should qualify fully on every single point. He wasn't interested in companies that were pretty good or met most of the criteria, all or nothing.
Right, uncompromising. Okay, let's maybe spend some decent time on the first 5 points then. They seem to form that foundational checklist for finding these sustainable growth companies.
Okay, sounds good. We start with point 1, long-term market potential. The basic requirement here is that the company's products or services must have enough market potential to allow for a really sizable increase in sales for at least several years into the future.
And that immediately weeds out companies just riding a temporary wave, right? Like a fad or some kind of one-off profit spike. We have to remember, Fisher was writing when certain industries after the war, like maybe radio manufacturers in the 40s and 50s, saw this huge but temporary surge in sales. That's a boom, Fisher says, not sustainable growth. Today, you might think of companies built purely around maybe a fleeting social media trend or benefiting from a temporary shortage of something. You're looking for durable, enduring demand. The source mentions Dow Chemical as a company that historically showed that kind of long-term planning, growing through many cycles.
Exactly. And building right on that, if management can see that the growth curve for their current big product is likely to flatten out eventually, they have to satisfy point 2. Management's growth determination. This is absolutely crucial. Top management must be actively, determinedly looking to develop new products or new processes to keep boosting total sales, even when their current winners inexorably mature.
So this isn't just about ticking a box saying we have an R&D department. It's about the whole company's attitude, its culture around innovation. It separates the firms that just sit back and enjoy their current success from those that have institutionalized the search for the next big thing. You want a management team focused on proactively building future profit streams, not just managing today's balance sheet.
And that commitment naturally flows into point 3, effective research and development, R&D. Fisher demands that the company's R&D efforts have to be effective relative to its size. Often you look at it as a percentage of sales. But the real qualitative insight here, the thing Fisher digs into, is that effectiveness isn't just about the total dollars spent. It's much more about how well the different technical skills within the R&D team work together.
Ah, okay, that's a critical distinction. He specifically warns against those expensive crash programs, right? Where companies just throw a ton of money at a problem hoping for a miracle cure. What you actually want to see is that technical synergy, maybe chemists collaborating effectively with metallurgists or mathematicians working closely with software engineers. If the R&D function is poorly coordinated, or if there's high staff turnover, or if different teams work in silos, then that budget, however big, is probably being wasted. It's really an indicator of internal operational health.
Well put. And that internal excellence should then lead to point 4, superior sales organization. Yeah. Does the company actually have an above-average sales organization? Fisher really stressed that even the best products in the world aren't enough on their own. They have to be sold effectively, consistently, and often consultatively.
Right. The source points to IBM back in the day as the classic example. Their incredible success was partly down to that almost legendary sales force. But you have to ask, what does a superior sales organization even look like today in the digital age?
That's a great question, and it's definitely evolved. Today, judging sales superiority means looking beyond just, the feet on the street sales team. It probably means evaluating things like their customer success programs, how efficient their digital marketing is, their ability to quickly adopt and use new tech like AI to interact with customers. A superior sales organization today might be one that's brilliant at managing subscription renewals or uses customer data incredibly effectively to personalize offers. It's about maintaining that selling edge as the products and markets change.
Makes sense. And that brings us then to point five, worthwhile profit margin. The company needs a profit margin that isn't just high right now, but is sustainable. It's worthwhile. The focus has to be on long-range profit growth, not just getting temporary bumps in margin because, say, there's a sudden supply shortage in the industry or they can hike prices for a little while.
Yeah, the core idea here is defensibility. Are the high margins defensible over the long run? You're looking for companies that achieve and, crucially, maintain wide profit margins. Maybe through superior efficiency, maybe through better research leading to unique products, maybe outstanding marketing and branding, or maybe because they own key patents or intellectual property. It really points to inherent pricing power. If a company can nudge its prices up without instantly losing all its customers, that suggests a strong competitive advantage, what today we often call a wide economic moat.
So again, it's not just about big profits this year, but having confidence that management is focused on protecting those defensible long-term margins rather than just grabbing short-term opportunities when the market cycle turns their way.
Exactly. And if you kind of pull back and look at these first 5 points together, long-term market potential, management's growth determination, effective R&D, a superior sales org, and sustainable worthwhile margins, they really form a cohesive foundational checklist. They force you as an investor to look right past the surface stuff, the current valuation multiples, and really assess the engine driving the company's long-term health and its ability to stay ahead of the competition.
And this really brings us back to the heart of Fisher's impact, doesn't it? As his son, Ken Fisher, who's also a well-known investor, observed, his father's writings acted like a mirror for many people. They showed them ways of looking at themselves as investors and looking at the market that they just hadn't really considered before. It's not just about ticking boxes. It's about developing the wisdom to actually identify and trust management's character over the long haul.
Indeed, and we should remember we've only scratched the surface here with the first 5 points. The framework for identifying superior growth potential, the full classic, lays out 15 points. There are critical areas we haven't even touched on yet, like labor and personnel relations, sophisticated cost analysis, management depth and integrity, and crucially, his thoughts on when you should actually sell a stock, which hopefully we can dig into in a future book talk.
Absolutely, lots more to explore there. But here's maybe the ultimate insight for today. Fisher's work powerfully shows that you don't necessarily need to chase the latest fad or rely only on incredibly complex spreadsheets that are constantly changing. What you really need is to understand the fundamental character of the business itself and the long-range vision and integrity of the people running it. That deep qualitative understanding, that's the real shortcut to becoming a truly well-informed and hopefully successful investor. Thank you so much for joining us for this book talk on high finance and uncommon profits.
Yeah, it's been great. And if you found this discussion helpful or insightful, please do subscribe to our channel. We'll have more discussions and talks diving deep into the essential knowledge you need to succeed.
And maybe here's something provocative to think about until next time. If Fisher's 15 points framework has been out there for decades, offering what seems like a pretty robust defense against investing in fundamentally flawed, maybe even fraudulent companies, why do so many investors, even professionals, still seem to overlook the basic truths they reveal? Is the siren call of short-term quarterly performance just too powerful, even for the most disciplined players in the market? Something to mull over.